So, what's UCLA's offense going to look like after the Rico Flores injury update and all the receivers starting to commit to UCLA in 26 and 27?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can get $5, and if you win, you get $150 in bonus bets. If you win that first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we're getting started, it's been a couple days old now since DeShaun Foster told the media after that first practice this week during the last week of the regular season, last week of UCLA football this year, as they prepare to take on Fresno State. And it came with the news that Rico Flores Jr. is not going to be available for the rest of the season. That seemed pretty much all said and done when Flores Jr. has been out for a very, very long time. Last time Rico Flores Jr. was able to have any sort of stats, it was, I believe, a couple weeks ago. But for Rico, he is no longer available potentially until next September. All right. The last time Rico Flores played in the game was against Oregon, where he made 3 receptions for 27 yards. All right. So he played in the Hawaii game, the Indiana game, the LSU game, the Oregon game. So he played in 3 of the toughest games UCLA had to play in, 2 of which are teams in the top 10. And then he got to play at LSU, where he made 4 catches for 27 yards, with the big game being his 3-catch, 100-yard game for a touchdown against Hawaii, where if he doesn't have that big game, UCLA doesn't beat Hawaii early on. And he was a big guy. He started over Logan Loya. He was the initial winner out of camp at that slot position in the Eric Bieniemy offense. And since he's been a bit banged up, he has been, a non-factor. It's been Logan Loya. So where does UCLA go from here? With DeShaun Foster saying that Rico Flores Jr., the hope is he can get that medical red shirt. He's only played in 4 games, so he can easily redshirt. He played 1 true freshman year at Notre Dame, and now he's got that 4 games, hopefully medical redshirt, and won't be, after that setback, available through fall and spring practice. So spring practice in early 25, might miss all of fall, which leaves the question, what's UCLA going to do? I was looking at the list of guys who do not have much eligibility left. And what's interesting is UCLA's receiver room is actually so young that they don't have anybody of note that is losing eligibility as of this Saturday. You're going to see the end of the careers for Ethan Garbers and longtime Bruin and NIL champion and Chase Griffin. You'll see the long career of Keegan Jones come to an end. He's been around for quite some time. Even Anthony Atkins, who's turning into a fullback in his transition into this Eric Bieniemy offense. You're going to see a lot of transition on the tight end, the offensive line, which UCLA will have to address as well. But in the receiver room, even J. Michael Sturdivant has another year. Logan Loya came in 2020, only played in 4 games in 21, if he wants to. And now with the additional injury news of Rico Flores Jr. not potentially being ready until the start of next season, let alone wondering what week 1 is. Of course, that's DeShaun Foster projecting weeks out, so maybe things can get much better, but a setback is never something you want to hear. UCLA's young receivers have been good, specifically Kwazi Gilmer. He has been fantastic for UCLA in his freshman year. And where did these UCLA commits come on? We'll talk about that in a minute, but does that mean Logan Loya stays an extra year? He only played those 4 games, so if you want to utilize that 2021 season where he only played in 4 games, utilize it at UCLA, or if he wants to go elsewhere in a different offense where he could be the number 1, Loya has been a key component to a UCLA offense that has not exactly always been favorable to the UCLA receivers this year, despite Logan's preseason proclamation that everybody's going to feast. Well, everybody's been snacking and nibbling a little bit more than everybody's been feasting with what we hoped could have been a vaunted offense. Now, UCLA has a super stacked receiver room. I wonder what this means for Flores going forward, right? The first 4 commits for UCLA's 26 class are all receivers. So if you think about it from Flores' perspective, he's already transferred once, has pretty much had a lost season this year due to injury. And if he's going to be injured and can't practice until September 2025, whenever you expect the fall opening for him will be, and say Loya returns, does he stay rehab at UCLA and then transfer out when technically after next year he would be draft eligible? Or is that, when you've got 4 more guys coming in 26, where I think UCLA would have hoped he would be so good in 24 and 25 that he would cycle out just from sheer NFL draft prospectus? That's not looking to be the case with how he's been injured this year and how much that might linger into next year. Might create a logjam with a lot of receivers UCLA has. The 4, because they got the Pula twins. They had 1 committed. I'll talk about him in a minute in the 26 class. Heck, they already got a 27 commit. They're stacking the skill positions right now. While we're still wondering if it's going to be a true freshman quarterback next year or Justin Martin throwing, who's going to protect them, as the Bruins will be losing Spencer Holsteg and Josh Carlin. It seems like they've found things as a starting center with Yoon moving over. If the Bruins can find a tackle to stay healthy for the majority of the season and some replacements in the O-line, the receiver room will be interesting. But the top guy, especially after the first week or two, might be aced out of a spot, although we've seen the talent flash from J. Michael Sturdivant from time to time. It was Flores who took that mantle early, had the big, long touchdown grab against the Rainbow Warriors. I just wonder how his career is going to project. Is it one that's going to end in a transfer? Is it one that he can get healthy and he's so good next year leads to an immediate NFL draft opportunity? I'm not sure that will happen if you've missed a year, but that you could always find that. Or is it something where he gets healthy, finishes that at UCLA, gets a degree, and then turns that into an opportunity elsewhere with the amount of receivers UCLA is bringing in? And this doesn't even count with all the portal guys UCLA is going to have to go into. Offensive line, potentially a quarterback, in addition to what they're bringing in with Mad Iamaleava, who didn't even play a high school senior season because he transferred after week 0 of his high school season. So there's a lot of wonderful questions starting to begin to bubble up to the surface now that the regular season comes to an end. And I know they're trying to truly figure out what the transfer portal window is for college football. They keep shifting it, changing rules. For UCLA, maybe they'll do what Mick Cronin did, which was as soon as the season's over, they're making calls. They're making calls. They're making calls. So who's coming to UCLA? We'll talk about that next. It's going to be interesting. Maybe not all the pieces and the places they need at the moment, but DeShaun Foster and his crew have been putting in work, which makes him so much better in this aspect than Chip Kelly, even though the one thing Kelly could do was work a transfer portal guy. Get ready to tackle the NFL action on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, if you're a new customer, bet $5. Get that first $5 bet. If you win it, get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and more all in one place. If you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your live bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So this Rico Flores injury news, the Logan Loya decision is going to have so much ripple effect with the incoming guys, right? DeShaun Foster has literally already had work being put in with the transfer portal. Yeah, already work being put in with the transfer portal for this year's upcoming transfer class. So that means UCLA's already got a transfer commit. They've got still maybe some last-minute work to do for the class of 25. They've got a commit from the 26 class. They've got a commit from the 27 class. They've done just about everything to prove that, yes, Chip Kelly could work the portal, but DeShaun Foster has completely implemented a system that is going to produce much better UCLA recruiting than Chip Kelly ever cared to do beyond just, oh, this kid looks good, let's grab him, maybe develop a walk-on or two. All right, there's been some great stories on this roster from Chip Kelly guys, but why not get even better talented guys at every position and not just hit on a couple? Because there's always going to be the developmental players who can make the big-time jumps like we've seen with the Carson Schlesinger. But the Bruins are putting in the work. Now they all happen to be in the receiver room, and let's remind you who is coming to UCLA and why the Rico Flores Jr. and the Logan Loya decisions, the J. Michael Sturdivant decision, all those have to play in with Jaden Wilson, a former Arkansas receiver. He's a class of 21 guy, 6'3", former 3-star. He's been around for about 4 years, played in one game, but he's committed to UCLA. I was reading what it says on the Bruin Blitz about him as a graduate transfer committing about 5 days ago, November 22nd, from when we're recording this. But now you see Rico Flores Jr., and I wonder how much they've known, at least Eric Frazier, the UCLA receivers coach, DeShaun Foster, and how much that has affected getting a guy like Wilson. He's been around the block, hasn't put in a lot of stats at Arkansas, but probably wants to build a resume for 1 year at least, And then you're like, hey, does he want to come back? Can he come back? Does Flores get healthy? So then you get a Jaden Wilson who comes in, and that's somebody who wants to be an immediate impact. And he sees UCLA as the opportunity to do so when we've said already the UCLA receiver room is one of the toughest, arguably in the Big Ten, to get some play time. There's a lot of guys battling and jostling for spots. Now, let's not forget that UCLA is already bringing in a Jace Brown, who's already committed. They've already got in his fellow quarterback, Maddie Meleava, both of which transferred to Long Beach Poly, that are supposed to be coming together as a duo. And that's if they stay together coming to UCLA and play right away. So that'll be some interesting battle for playing time. Then the other news, the 2026 news, is that UCLA got their 4th commit for this class. All receivers / athletes, all right? You've got the Pula twins from Utah. You've got Jonas Smith, the 6-foot receiver from Santa Margarita. And then depending on the ranking system, whether you believe it's Jaron Pula, who's a 4-star, if you look at the 24/7 sports model, or you've got Kenneth Moore, the NorCal kid from Stockton that committed to UCLA, the verge of a 4-star guy. Some ranking systems I've seen him rank higher than Jaron Pula. Then here he is, Kenneth Moore III, coming to UCLA. And this is what he had to say about this. He was getting recruited by Washington, by Arizona. And hold on. I think UCLA should be able to out-recruit Arizona. If Jed Fish was still there, I don't know. But Arizona's been such a disappointment this year in their first year in the Big 12 since Jed Fish bolted to Washington. The Bruins should be able to win any recruiting football battle with the Wildcats. Hot take. Then with Jed Fish at Washington, interesting that was a battle there, and UCLA won. What Moore told On3 was that I've been to UCLA 3 times this year, and every time I go, it's always a great family-oriented vibe, and they honestly make me feel at home. You don't have to go so far to recruit guys. Yes, maybe NorCal is not technically in the backyard, but for UCLA's recruiting trails, anything in California is practically in your own backyard. The greater Los Angeles area produces so much talent, and if you need to go to Stockton, if you need to go to San Francisco, if you need to go down to San Diego, there you got to go across the border into a different state, a little up north, maybe a little bit to the east, still in the western part of the United States. There is a lot of talent, and UCLA is absolutely loaded in receiver talent. The first transfer portal get from Arkansas as a receiver. The first 4 guys in the 26 class are all receivers. It's going to be an interesting way for recruiting when you need an offensive lineman to protect your quarterback, both of which are question marks at some positions heading into 25 and beyond. And it's not just question marks as who's going to play. How can they not only fill those empty spots, but improve upon some weaknesses from the last few years heading into their future era as a Big Ten conference member in college football? How can they do that? I don't know. But Eric Frazier has been making a lot of moves, transfer, 4 commits in the 26 class. And, oh, by the way, Did you know UCLA has their first commit from Tulare? I believe it's Demaje Riley, 5'8" receiver from Tulare, who is committed. So UCLA has got commits in the portal for 25, 26 commit, and a 27 commit. So they have gone out and recruited so well. Now, if I see another receiver commit, I'm going to get a little frustrated. Until Jim Michaels says he's not coming back, or Logan Loya, or something happens to Rico, or somebody leaves, I don't want to see another receiver commit unless they get the best of the best, unless they get the top guy in the Southland across the country. I want to see the best offensive lineman available. I'm wondering how much they can find in the portal, because they did their best. They got Holsteg from Purdue. They tried to get Kadir a couple years ago. They tried to get the UNLV guy who was a little bit injured this year. Can they find the best D-line talent, because they're going to lose Toia, the best O-line talent? And a lot of the players they are losing this year are coming on the defense. The secondary, pretty much all the linebacker room, and that's still with the question mark if Carson Swessinger will return next year. If he does, that gives UCLA a standout captain-like option in the center of the field defensively who will wear the green dot. If not, then UCLA has completely revamped the defense with a lot of youth, a lot of guys getting more opportunities next year, and much-needed recruiting. So the Bruins have to recruit anything other than receiver. I'm glad they've done it. They have to. You have to keep bringing in talent. Guys are going to leave. You have to re-recruit the guys on your roster. Expect the unexpected super talented player to come and open in the transfer portal where you have to go get them. But now the Bruins have to focus on other targets. Solidifying who's your quarterback. Is it the longtime Justin Martin, or is it going to be the incoming freshman that has to learn a super complicated offense that hasn't played football in basically a year? Big question marks. They got to fill out the offensive line, because there's at least 2 spots, maybe 3, depending on who you think should start, and 2 that are leaving due to graduation. Defensive line, you're losing a lot of transfer portal guys mixed in with the biggest piece of them all, Jay Tuia, who the Bruins had to re-recruit after he went to the portal and then came back out after spurning Texas. And we all have to thank Jay Tuia for turning down a big NIL payday, an opportunity to play in the CFP, to play in the SEC, just to come back to UCLA. Now you got to win those recruiting battles early, because they already brought Toia from the portal over from SC. Can they get a guy like him, get a big offensive lineman, 6'5", 6'6", while developing what they have, and turn that into a product on the field that is successful and not just a 4 or 5 win team? This year's been fine, probably better than some expected after the 1-5 start, but they have to find ways to turn out even better at every position next year with this year's recruiting in the transfer portal, and future years with the 26 recruiting class heating up. Next, we're going to talk about updates a little bit on the UCLA women's basketball team with some injury news talking about. All right, next on Locked On UCLA. Well, the UCLA women are the number 1 team in the country, and I don't think anything else can truly prove that they won't be for a very long time. UCLA has a very easy schedule for a while. They've got 3 games over the Thanksgiving weekend in Hawaii. They play UT Martin, Fresno State. They play the University of Hawaii leading into December. Okay. They do start Big Ten play against Washington on the road in Seattle, December 8th. I do think the Bruins should handle that quite well. Then they come back to wrap up the non-conference with Long Beach on the road. They play Cal Poly at home. They'll have an interesting battle in mid to late December against Creighton, one of those one-off non-conference neutral site games in San Francisco. They'll play Creighton in the Invisalign Bay Area Women's Classic, late tip, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, before they finally play some Big Ten competition like Nebraska, Michigan, and Indiana. But the next couple of non-conference games that are decent are Creighton and then Baylor, who they'll play in the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey on January 20th in the middle of the day of I think it's MLK Day. So that'll be in the middle of the day Monday, while the Bruins are in the midst of an East Coast Big Ten swing. So unlike last year where they had a very tough Thanksgiving week tournament where they got to play UConn and everything, they had their big swing. And they knocked out the champion in South Carolina by beating them real good. The one in Columbia 2 years ago was a more seesaw-like battle that saw South Carolina come back and win at home. This one, Bruins were up 10 at the end of the first quarter, came back and dominated. And let me tell you, when I think one of the best UCLA players on this roster, arguably the best player in this transfer class for this season, hasn't even played a game as we await for her to get healthy. That's Charlisse Leger-Walker. I've talked about her a little bit. She's the transfer from Washington State. She has, I believe, just 1 year left, a 23-year-old redshirt COVID senior, and comes in with a knee injury that she suffered in a weird twist of fate against UCLA, where she led her team single-handedly to a huge lead at Pauley Pavilion before getting injured. And the Bruins nearly came back and won before losing. And that was a year after she single-handedly led her Cougar squad to beat UCLA in the Pac-12 tournament championship game in the 22 Pac-12 tournament. Yes, or the 23 Pac-12 tournament. Getting my years mixed up, right? 2 seasons ago, as we get it all set together. Now, UCLA comes here with an opportunity to be even better. As Leger-Walker, I think that I saw the media interviewing Corey Close, and it was talked about that Leger-Walker, the decisions will be made. Corey Close was saying, yeah, decisions will have to be made. And I wonder what that means. But she also mentioned we weren't expecting her before the first of the year. So do the Bruins, you can't rush her back. You shouldn't rush her back. But she's such a talented player that if she's on the floor and say Arnesalo comes out and is playing like a true freshman one of these times, or if say Kiki Rice has a setback or needs a break as she's still recovering from a shoulder that she had in the an off-season shoulder injury that delayed her start to the year, that gives you more depth in the backcourt. Or maybe London Jones is ice cold, or you need somebody who can just do it all in one, and it can't go to Lauren Betts every time. That is what Charlisse Leger-Walker can do. Ball handling, a taller guard who can shoot it better than Kiki Rice, I think better than Arnesalo, and Corey Close is very high on her. And if she can play, and if she's healthy and can contribute in Big Ten play, it's the games against the USCs, the South Carolinas, the UConns that would make a big difference for her to be in the lineup. Whether she's in the lineup or not against some of these Big Ten teams, I think UCLA should be able to wipe the floor with a good chunk of the Big Ten Conference, which was kind of the thought coming in. They've got a built-up program, leaving the rigors of the Pac-12 basketball conference that was becoming one of the nation's toughest and best conference. I think last year, top to bottom, was one of the toughest conferences in all of college basketball. And you go to the Big Ten, where I just don't think the depth is as much. What Corey Close brought in a player like Leger-Walker in the portal is to get them in the tournament. She's kind of like you think about baseball trade deadline acquisition. If you think about the Dodgers, she's like a Tommy Edman, if you want to equate it, except to like a Dodger thing, even though she's already led her team to the tournament single-handedly. So like a better midseason trade acquisition that you're waiting and you're like, okay, you see the faces. Lauren Betts is going to be one of the players of the year. You're going to have Kiki Rice, who should be an All-American. You're going to see all these other players growing and blossoming into new roles with the transfers and the freshmen. Alina Arnesalo already making a name for herself. But, you know, like that NLCS MVP, that Sweet 16, that Regional West MVP, that's somebody that Leger-Walker can be and go put up 25 or make the clutch bucket for the win when UCLA is struggling against a team in the tournament. And if she's available and if she's making some progress, okay. That's not the sense I got from Corey Close. Some decisions will have to be made, but she won't be here until Big Ten play has already started. And that's beyond the early start with Washington. We're talking when UCLA plays Nebraska, past that into early January is the earliest she can come back after that knee injury she suffered earlier in 24 against the UCLA Bruins. Now, could we have an ironic twist of fate and she helps lead them to a national championship? That would be amazing because the Bruins are that good. And if they get her back, that could be that X factor that can help guard and be the one-on-one against a Juju Watkins or against a Paige Beckers. Because a lot of these superstars this year guard-oriented. And if the Bruins can throw in the slashing junior Kiki Rice, the young freshman Arna Solo, you throw in a third option, then I think UCLA is nearly impossible to beat, which they're already very tough to beat with the roster they tried out there on a given night. You bring in someone like that, if she's healthy and can play this year, man, this team will be on page to be nearly unbeatable. That is if she can come back healthy and if the Bruins are unbeaten until that point. They will be favored in every game, I believe, until they play USC at the Galen Center. And we'll find out what USC can do after their home loss to Notre Dame. But good thing they lost. In the meantime, UCLA, number 1 team in the country, and that calls for an 8 clap. And we'll talk more UCLA football, basketball, preview to the Fresno State game. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with your family. Eat as much food and have a good time. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.